Cyber Threat Brief for August 26, 2026. CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, adds actively exploited Guidia remote code execution to KEV, known exploited vulnerabilities catalog with a Thursday patch deadline. Multiple ICS, industrial control systems, vendors ship critical authentication bypasses affecting industrial gateways and vehicle brake systems. U.S. sanctions 5 Iranian Moz-linked hackers behind years of critical infrastructure breaches and cryptocurrency theft. Here's the full breakdown of today's top security stories. Next section, critical alerts. Critical Guidia remote code execution actively exploited as CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, issues patch deadline CVE 2026-60004. CISA added CVE 2026-60004 to its known exploited vulnerabilities catalog, warning that attackers are actively exploiting a critical remote code execution flaw in Guidia with a CVSS, the Common Vulnerability Scoring System, score of 9. 8. The vulnerability allows an attacker with ordinary write access to a repository to execute arbitrary shell commands as the Guidia OS user by abusing the diffpatch endpoint to install and execute a Git hook. With default open registration enabled, unauthenticated visitors can create accounts and trigger the exploit. At least one documented attack deployed a cryptocurrency miner-like payload after the dropper killed competing processes and fetched architecture-specific binaries. The flaw affects all Guidia versions from 1.17 onward. Action: update to Guidia 1.27.1 immediately. Federal agencies must patch by August 28, 2026. Disable open registration. Set disable registration equals true, and enable email confirmation, register email confirm equals true, if patching is delayed. Review DNS logs for resolutions to 169.254, 169, 254, and check for CPU spikes indicating cryptojacking activity. Sources: The Hacker News CISA. Next section, business and infrastructure threats. NVIDIA NeMo claw local AI model poisoning via DNS rebinding, no CVE or common vulnerabilities and exposures. Oasis Security disclosed that NVIDIA NeMo claws Allama configuration on Windows and WSL binds the model server to 0.0.0 to 11,434 without authentication, allowing attackers to use DNS rebinding to take control of local AI instances and inject hidden instructions into chat templates. The poisoned instructions persist across conversations and survive agent restarts. NeMo Claw v0.0. 35 fixed the issue on Mac OS and Linux, Windows installations in v0.0. 34 carry a warning but no fix. Attack leverages the same DNS rebinding technique patched in Allama v0.1. 29, CVE 2024-28224, in March 2024, but NeMo Claw skips host header validation when bound to non-loopback addresses. Action: update NeMo Claw to v0.0. 35 or later on Mac OS/Linux. Windows users should monitor for updated releases and avoid exposing Allama on 0.0.0.0. Validate host and origin headers if running custom configurations. Check DNS logs for suspicious rebinding patterns. Source: The Hacker News. Sleepwalker Backdoor uses custom 23 instruction language and network trigger packets an independent researcher documented Sleepwalker, an unsigned 64-bit Windows DLL, dynamic link library. Backdoor that sideloads into Asset Management Agent, ERA Agent, EXE, and waits for a specifically crafted network packet before executing commands in a custom 23-instruction bytecode language. The backdoor monitors every network interface in promiscuous mode, capturing all traffic including packets destined for other machines, making gateways and VPN servers potential monitoring points. It supports 6 transports including VMware vMakai for hypervisor-level persistence, similar to UNC 3886 tactics. The sample contains no domains, IPs, or URLs and makes no outbound connections, evading infrastructure-based detection. Attribution, deployment method, and victim details remain unknown. Action: search for unsigned DPAPI, DLL files in Asset Management Agent directories. Monitor for ERA Agent, EXE loading non-Microsoft signed DLLs. Review network captures for unexplained promiscuous mode interfaces. Check VMware vMakai socket activity on virtualized infrastructure. This is post-compromise persistence requiring admin rights, so detection indicates prior breach requiring full incident response. Source: The Hacker News. Fake Apple support AI voice calls target stolen device owners. Annie Moos KIT FAS. SoC Radar, disclosed Annie Moose KIT, a phishing-as-a-service platform targeting owners of stolen Apple devices using AI voice agents that impersonate Apple support and request device passcodes, Apple ID credentials, and Live 2FA codes to remove activation lock. The platform operates on a credit-metered system with 5 attack channels: email 1, 50 credits, SMS varies by sender ID, WhatsApp recorded voice 1 credit, and AI voice agents 2 credits. Between August 2025 and May 2026, operators made 200 AI voice calls at $0.96 each, with 179 targeting Brazil. Lures cite the device's internal Apple model identifier and live Find My status pulled from the stolen hardware. The platform uses commercial voice service VAPI with 5 configured personas named Alice from Apple support. Action: warn users that Apple never requests device passcodes, passwords, or 2FA codes for support. Report unsolicited calls claiming to be from Apple support. Enable stolen device protection on iOS 17. 3+ to require Face ID/Touch ID and location verification before Apple ID sign-out or passcode changes. Monitor for phishing domains spoofing Apple support pages. Source: The Hacker News. Coordinated MyChart phishing targets Epic patient portal passwords. Multiple health systems across the U.S. issued alerts warning patients about coordinated phishing messages attempting to steal credentials for Epic Systems' MyChart patient portal. The effort appears coordinated by a single threat actor or group targeting Epic's widely deployed patient portal system used by hundreds of hospitals and health systems nationwide. Action: alert healthcare staff and patients to ignore unsolicited MyChart password reset or verification requests. Enable MFA, multi-factor authentication, on Epic MyChart accounts where available. Monitor for unauthorized MyChart logins and password reset attempts. Review email security gateways for Epic/MyChart spoofing campaigns. Source: data breaches. Net. Next section: Windows/Active Directory security. Microsoft publishes patch window, collapse analysis, and control plane recommendations. Microsoft published analysis on the collapsing patch window between vulnerability disclosure and exploitation, arguing that AI tools are accelerating offensive timelines while defensive patching processes remain unchanged. The post advocates for a new control plane approach beyond traditional patch test deploy cycles, though specific product recommendations are unclear. The analysis notes that vulnerabilities announced in the morning can face active scanning and exploitation by afternoon, while enterprise validation and deployment still require days or weeks. Action: review patch deployment timelines for critical systems. Prioritize CIS, a KEV, known exploited vulnerabilities catalog vulnerabilities for emergency patching procedures. Consider implementing virtual patching or runtime protection for systems requiring extended testing windows. Evaluate whether current patch testing processes reflect actual exploitation timelines. Source: Microsoft Security Blog. Next section: General Security News. Russia begins blocking DNS over HTTPS and DNS over TLS servers. Russian internet users reported widespread blocks of DNS over HTTPS, DUH, and DNS over TLS, DUT, servers including Cloudflare's 1.1.1.1 and Google's 8.8.8.8, suggesting the government implemented previously announced plans to block protocols that hide users' intended destinations. The blocks appear across multiple regions, though Roskomnadzor has not confirmed official action. Russia tested similar blocks on Beeline's network in March 2026 and announced plans to block DUH in 2021 before tightening internet controls following the Ukraine invasion. Source: Risky Biz News. Interpol Operation Jackal Roman 4 arrests 58 in West African cybercrime crackdown. Interpol 8-month Operation Jackal Roman 4 resulted in 58 arrests and identified 263 suspects linked to West African organized crime groups including Black Axe. The operation spanned 22 countries and targeted crime-as-a-service networks, providing domains and money laundering support. Highlights include dismantling a Romanian call center investment scam that stole Euros 143 million, seizing $2.67 million in South Africa from syndicates running romance scams against retirees, and identifying 196 individuals in Argentina linked to a major KS network. Previous Jackal operations arrested hundreds and seized millions in assets targeting African financial crime networks. Source: The Hacker News Dark Reading. U.S. sanctions: 5 Iranian Moaz-linked hackers behind infrastructure. Breaches: the Treasury Department sanctioned 5 Iranian cyber actors affiliated with Iran's Ministry of Intelligence and Security, Moaz, as part of Operation Economic Outcast. Individuals linked to the Tehran-based Mabna Institute conducted widespread compromises of U.S. critical infrastructure since late 2023 targeting energy, defense, healthcare, IT, and financial sectors. Kevin Fayez Gerblog, Saber Shahbazi Balucheh, and Mohammad Reza Khadkadeh conducted the bulk of network compromises and data exfiltration. Armin Khazadian focused on cryptocurrency heists, including a $30,000 Bitcoin wallet theft. TRM Labs identified $16.8 million in total funds across 30 wallets linked to the 5 actors. Source: The Hacker News. CIS, a red team assessment shows detection gap between 2 organizations. CIS, released a cybersecurity advisory comparing 2 simultaneous red team assessments using identical tactics. Organization A failed to detect initial compromise, privilege escalation, lateral movement to sensitive business systems, and cloud resource access. Organization B detected the initial compromise and quarantined affected systems, forcing the red team to adopt an assume breach model, where defenders again detected activity in the OT DMZ Bastion host and isolated it. The assessment demonstrates the critical importance of early detection and response capabilities. Action: review detection coverage for initial access vectors, including phishing and web application compromises. Test SOC detection and response against MITRE ATT and CK-ATT and CK techniques documented in CISA AA 26-237A. Conduct tabletop exercises for assume breach scenarios. Source: CISA. Q2 2026 vulnerability registrations reach unprecedented levels. Kaspersky reports that CVE registrations in Q2 2026 reached unprecedented levels driven by widespread AI adoption for application development and vulnerability research. AI tools help discover entire new vulnerability classes, particularly in the Linux networking subsystem, including the Dirty Frag series. Security researchers increasingly published exploits for unpatched vulnerabilities. A researcher named Nightmare Eclipse published fully functional exploits for Windows Defender vulnerabilities Blue Hammer and Red Sun before CVE registration, setting a new precedent for disclosure without waiting for patches. Source: SecureList Kaspersky. Cybersecurity affordability crisis threatens small businesses and supply chains. The global average data breach cost reached a record $4.99 million in 2025, up 12% year-over-year to $1,100 per hour. A global cybersecurity spending is projected to hit $239.8 billion in 2026. Small to medium businesses face disproportionate risk as venture-backed security vendors prioritize enterprise customers with expensive products that don't account for SMBs lacking dedicated security teams or 24/7 SOCs. The affordability gap creates systemic supply chain risks as millions of underprotected small businesses become weak links. Source: Dark Reading. Next section, Patch Priority. Guidea 1.27.1 Critical RCE, CVE 2026-60004, CVSS 9.8, Actively Exploited, CIS a KEV deadline August 28. Siemens Symantec EOT 2050, Advanced v4.3.4.1 Missing Authentication in Node-RED HTTP Interface, CVE 2026-58115. Bendix EC80 Break ECU Stack-Based Buffer Overflow, allowing remote code execution in vehicle brake systems, CVE 2026-67560, and 2 additional CVEs. See show notes for the full list. Mini Orange SAML SSO Plugin 5.4.5, plus Critical Authentication Bypass, allowing admin access to WordPress sites, CVE 2026-61979, CVE 2026-15981. Byte NE 2D11 Gateway Multiple Authentication Bypasses and Credential Exposure Issues. 6 CVEs including CVE 2026-71187. Next section, Vulnerability Disclosures. Siemens Symantec EOT 2050, Advanced Missing Authentication, CVE 2026-58115. Siemens Symantec EOT 2050, Advanced devices running industrial OS with Node-RED installed contain missing authentication in the Node-RED HTTP interface, allowing unauthenticated remote code execution with maximum privileges. Affects all versions before v4.3.4.1. Siemens released updates and recommends hardening or uninstalling Node-RED. Action: update to v4.3.4.1 or later. Harden Node-RED installations per vendor GUI redacted content. Uninstall Node-RED if not required. Ensure EOT gateways are not directly internet accessible. Source: CISA ICS, Industrial Control Systems, Advisory. Byte NE2D11 Gateway Multiple Authentication Bypasses, 6 CVEs. Byte NE2D11 Industrial Gateway Firmware, FW9167-011, contains 6 vulnerabilities including missing authentication. CVE 2026-73125. Cleartext Credential Transmission, Plaintext Credential Exposure, Client-Side Authentication Bypass, and Improper Session Token Protection. Combined, the flaws allow unauthenticated attackers to access sensitive configuration data, modify device settings, hijack sessions, and disrupt operations. Byte acknowledged the vulnerabilities and indicated a patch was under development but has not responded to coordination requests, and 4 additional CVEs. See show notes for the full list. Action: isolate Byte NE2D11 devices behind firewalls with no internet exposure. Implement network segmentation, separating industrial gateways from business networks. Monitor for unauthorized configuration changes. Contact Byte for patch status. Source: CISA IX Advisory. Bendix EC80 Break ECU, Stack Overflow, and Out of Bounds Write 3 CVEs. Bendix EC80 ESB Break ECUs contain a stack-based buffer overflow. CVE 2026-67560. And Out of Bounds Write CVE 2026-68967, allowing attackers to crash the ECU, remotely execute code, or inject arbitrary CAN bus traffic. Successful exploitation could disable ABS functions, steering assist, speedometer, shifting capabilities, and automatic traction control. Affects 11 product variants across firmware versions Z228999, Z266494, and Z286098. Action: contact Bendix at info@bendix.com for firmware updates. EC80 ESB Plus variants update to Z300822. EC80 ESB6 is /6M/PLC/second, can/gateway update to Z302578. EC80 ESP4/4M/PLC update to Z302579. Prioritize commercial vehicle fleets and critical transportation infrastructure. Source: CISA IX Advisory. WordPress Mini Orange SAML SSO Plugin Authentication Bypass, CVE 2026-61979. CVE 2026-15981, Mini Orange SAML 2. 0 Single Sign-On plugin for WordPress contains 2 critical authentication bypass vulnerabilities, allowing unauthenticated attackers to log in as any user including administrators. Affects 10,000 plus WordPress sites using the free edition, plus unknown numbers using paid/enterprise versions. The developer patched all affected versions but did not warn users, listed fixes as bug fixes rather than security patches, and used different versioning for paid editions, making it difficult to determine patch status. Free edition patched in v5.4. 5. Attackers are exploiting the flaws in opportunistic campaigns. Action: update Mini Orange SAML SSO plugin immediately. Free edition users update to v5.4. 5 or later. Paid edition users manually update from vendor. Review WordPress admin access logs for unauthorized logins. Enable WordPress security hardening including 2FA for admin accounts. Source: Security Week. ZoneMinder Authenticated OS Command Injection, CVE 2026-76060. ZoneMinder versions 1.37.48 and 1.38.3 contain an authenticated OS command injection vulnerability in event export functionality. The export file HTTP request parameter passes unsanitized input into PHP exec, allowing any authenticated user with view events permission to execute arbitrary OS commands as the web server user. Action: update ZoneMinder to v1.38. 3 or later from ZoneMinder. com/downloads. Review user permissions and remove view events access from untrusted accounts. Audit web server logs for suspicious export file requests. Source: CISA IX Advisory. Furuno FA50 AIS Transponder Hard-Coded Credentials, CVE 2026-59769, CVE 2026-67578, Furuno FA50 Class B AIS Transponder, discontinued October 2020, contains hard-coded credentials, CVE 2026-59769, and missing authentication, CVE 2026-67578, allowing attackers with network access to alter device settings. Furuno notes production ended and software updates will no longer be provided. Mitigation relies on physical security and network isolation. Action: do not connect Furuno FA50 devices directly to the internet. Implement physical security controls on vessels. Consider replacing end-of-life maritime safety equipment with supported alternatives. Source: CISA Ix Advisory. PayRange API, Missing Authorization, CVE 2026-18965. PayRange API contains missing authorization on management endpoints, exposing verbose details of every device on the PayRange network, with or without authentication. PayRange has not responded to coordination requests. The vulnerability affects payment kiosks in laundromats, vending machines, and other commercial facilities. Action: contact PayRange customer support at support@payrange.com. Monitor PayRange-connected devices for unauthorized configuration changes or service disruptions. Source: CISA Ix Advisory. Rentley Smart Home Credential Protection Weakness, CVE 2026-75960. Rentley Smart Home versions 20.1.0 and earlier contain insufficiently protected credentials, allowing attackers to retrieve PINs, including the master PIN, and override standard user permissions. Rentley patched the vulnerability in late June with no user action required. Action: verify Rentley Smart Home is updated beyond v20.1.0. Review access logs for unauthorized PIN retrievals. Rotate master PINs on property management systems using Rentley if compromise is suspected. Source: CISA Ix Advisory. Next section: Trends and Context. Today's threat landscape shows a clear acceleration in the time between disclosure and exploitation, with AI tools lowering the barrier for attackers while defensive patch cycles remain unchanged. The Guidea KEV edition highlights this compression with active exploitation before widespread awareness. Industrial and EOT devices continue showing fundamental authentication failures that should have been caught in security reviews years ago. The Iranian MOAS sanctions reveal years of undetected critical infrastructure breaches, underscoring persistent detection gaps even in defended environments. That concludes today's Cyber Threat Brief. From Carolina Clear Tech. Stay patched, stay vigilant.